All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to dive into something really complex, the educational history of Native Americans. And this story doesn't start with a goal of enlightenment. It starts with something much, much darker.
Yeah, just look at this quote from our source material. It really gets right to the heart of it. The early European approach saw education as a weapon, not a gift, but a weapon.
And the name for that weapon? Assimilation. The whole goal was to use the classroom, of all places, to systematically wipe out native traditions, their languages, their beliefs, and replace them all with the dominant European-American culture. Just totally overwrite it.
So you gotta ask, right? How did they actually pull this off? How do you turn a school, a place of learning, into a tool for cultural conquest?
Well, it was basically a two-step plan. First step, the federal government sets up the Bureau of Indian Affairs, or BIA, back in 1824. Its job? To control tribes on reservations. Step 2, and this is the really chilling part, the BIA starts its so-called educational mission. This meant taking Native kids, often forcibly, from their homes and sending them to government-run boarding schools, sometimes hundreds and hundreds of miles away from their families.
And what were they teaching in these schools? Well, this slide shows you it wasn't just reading and writing. They were pushing a whole new set of values, things like the importance of private property or cutthroat individual competition. And these ideas were often the complete opposite of many Native cultures that valued community and cooperation. So it really was about a total cultural replacement, right down to the way you think and the way you dress.
Now you can imagine, Native families didn't just stand by and let this happen. There was a lot of resistance, but the government was ready to play hardball. Our source points out a tactic that's just incredibly cruel. They would withhold food rations from parents who refused to give up their children. Think about that. They were literally using the threat of starvation to force compliance.
But here's where the story takes a turn. Because this isn't just a history of oppression. It's also an incredible story of resilience, of intellectual resistance, and amazing achievement. While the government was busy building this system to control them, Native people were building something entirely different for themselves. Okay, this slide right here perfectly captures that tension. On one side, you have this incredible moment of Native innovation. In 1822, a man named Sequoyah invents the Cherokee syllabary, an entire written language for his people, a true act of genius. And then, on the other side, just 2 years later, the U.S. government creates the BIA to control them. So you've got this explosion of creation right next to this new system of subjugation. It's happening at the exact same time. Wild.
And Sequoyah's invention? It was an absolute game changer. This one act of pure ingenuity, creating a writing system from scratch, it just sparked a fire. Almost overnight, it led to bilingual schools and even a weekly newspaper called the Cherokee Phoenix. It kicked off this amazing wave of literacy and communication all across the Cherokee Nation. Okay, so let's shift gears a bit. We need to talk about the fallout from all this, because this history of, miseducation, it's left some really deep and lasting scars that communities are still wrestling with today.
So one of the biggest challenges right now is something called the loss of critical mass. What does that mean? Well, today, the vast majority of Native kids are in public schools. And in those schools, they're often one of only a few Native students. They're isolated, without that strong community of peers that's so important for reinforcing their identity and just having that support system. And that loss of community has real, devastating consequences. Just look at this chart. Research shows a direct link to some really tough outcomes. Native American students now have the highest dropout rate of any student group in the country. They're more likely to have lower academic achievement and face higher risks of addiction. These aren't just numbers. This is the impact. This legacy, it doesn't just stay in the past. It echoes in our culture today in some really visible ways. I'm talking about the whole debate over using Native American stereotypes as school mascots. It's a huge controversy, and it's directly connected to this history.
And let's be clear, this isn't just about people's feelings getting hurt. The science is in on this one. Studies have found that these mascots cause real, direct psychological harm. When Native students are faced with these kinds of stereotypical mascots day in and day out, it actually leads to a measurable drop in their sense of self-worth.
So that brings us to the final part of our story today, and it might be the most important part. It's about the modern movement by Native Americans to take back control of their own education, not just for academic success, but for their very cultural survival.
Yeah, in response to everything we've talked about, a really powerful movement has been growing over the last few decades.
Tribes all across the country are fighting to win control of the schools on their own reservations. They want to be in charge of their children's education.
And why is this so important? Well, for these communities, it's pretty simple. They see controlling their own schools as the key to hitting two huge goals at once: boosting academic achievement for their kids, and at the same time, preserving their languages, their traditions, their unique cultural identities.
And that really leaves us with a final, big question to think about. After a century of an education system designed to erase culture, what does it mean to build a new one that's actually built on cultural identity? What does that look like? That's not a hypothetical question. It's the incredible experiment that's happening right now.